One day, they will all come to my funeral just to make sure that I stay dead. But today is not that day. I'm alive!
And we are back, All Elite family, for episode 16 of the All Elite podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Kazir, joined by my boy, my AEW buddy, Bitter Mark, All Elite AJ. How's it going, AJ?
It's going good. Finally moved in. I was moving in on the night of Double or Nothing, and since then I've just been unpacking. I've been editing film and working more on making more movies, so that's going to be cool.
That's great, man. I'm excited that you were able to get all moved in and everything. Unfortunately, we don't have Phil with us this week. He's still in the process of finishing moving into his new apartment and getting things settled in there, so unfortunately we weren't able to get him on once again. But we do plan on having him on in the future, as well as once he gets everything set up and lined up there. But for me, I've been really excited about just the progress that we've made with the podcast. Shout out to all of our new listeners. We've grown our listener base quite a bit this week, so that was awesome, and it was just exciting to go through that. I've also watched Double or Nothing, a couple of matches a second time off of that, so that was fun. I've really just been enjoying the whole new feel and vibe of wrestling with AEW really blowing up off of Double or Nothing, so that's been exciting. And we are just fresh off of Double or Nothing. AJ and I did a nice recap of that, and if you haven't heard it yet, you can check out our Twitter. We did a nice rundown on the matches, but this week we're going to cover our thoughts on things like the production and the commentary. We'll also cover the star ratings that Big Money Meltzer gave to the matches on the main card. We know a lot of people in the internet wrestling community, you either give Meltzer star ratings a lot of credence or you don't care about them at all. We sort of fall in between there, where we just sort of want to discuss them and use them as a base to talk about how we thought the matches and the match quality on the main card of the first AEW pay-per-view was. And we'll just talk about all of those things. But before that, let's just run down some of the news coming off of Double or Nothing. The biggest news coming off of Double or Nothing was that AEW managed to pull 98,000 pay-per-view buys, about 2/3 of that coming from the US, and then the other 1/3 coming from the UK, Canada, Australia, Germany. The UK was a strong second. Canada actually came in 5th behind Australia and Germany, so I do think there's some potential for Canada to sort of... There's an untapped market in Canada, and I think there have been some discussions with AEW getting a good television deal over there, so...
No, 100%. And there is an untapped market in Canada. I mean, you can think it's just like Michael Elgin or Kevin Owens or whatever, but like those are just some guys who came out of Canada that we've noticed. I feel like you don't realize how much of a market is in countries like Canada for wrestling and how many wrestlers there actually are until you can actually get, I guess, cameras there, like what happened with UK, where we started to see so many wrestling promotions pop up, and we saw ICW in Scotland, and we just started seeing these companies really start to showcase themselves a lot more, and people started giving them a chance, and I think you could really see that happen.
Exactly, and Canada just has a rich history of producing really talented, quality wrestlers, from Bret Hart to Chris Jericho to Edge, Christian to Kenny Omega, and then you have even Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn in WWE. Like, there are talented Canadian wrestlers throughout the world, and I think that WWE has a decent television deal there, but there are talks that AEW could end up with an even better television deal there, which just shows that there's that untapped market for AEW, with Canada being 5th, and that means that there's obviously not so many buys coming from Canada. That can change in the future, and they already have a deal with Fight TV and stuff in Canada, so it's not so hard to get the ball rolling, and for them to really make Canada a good foothold along with the UK and the US and really become almost a global company.
And I was really happy with the UK buy rate. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I was very surprised. We were talking before about how, I mean, the show started at like 12 a.m. in the UK, and that's kind of insane that they're just that close behind the US in buys.
Exactly. It's great to see that they're getting buys throughout the world, and the UK was obviously a market that they were heavily promoting in, and they wanted a good foothold in, and obviously that paid off for them. And another interesting part, I think, coming out of this pay-per-view is that there was a 50-50 split almost between traditional pay-per-view buys and streaming buys through Bleacher Report Live, and I don't think there was really many complaints throughout Bleacher Report Live. There were some like streaming issues and stream drops. We had a couple of issues with that, but other than that, there weren't a lot of issues for people across the board on Bleacher Report Live. It was a pretty decent experience, at least as a viewer, I think. And so I think it's a good sign for AEW to see that they're able to utilize both methods of getting their product out there. Even in UFC and WWE, there's not that 50-50 split of viewing. No. And I think we'll have to wait and see how that sort of plays out, if it's a really good thing.
Well, I mean,
but
WWE
I don't think it's a bad
especially
thing.
with the network, obviously that's more in the streaming department nowadays. Nobody's buying a $50 pay-per-view when you can get it for 10. But UFC is what's more surprising to me.
Yeah, exactly. And it is interesting to note that there are still people who would rather just buy a traditional pay-per-view, not really worry about the streaming and having to go through the hoops of the internet, or they just don't have good enough internet as it is.
That's true.
So it is good that they're able to keep that. And like I said, 98,000 buys, it's nothing necessarily record-breaking, but it is record-breaking in the fact of it's basically one of the most bought wrestling pay-per-views in the United States outside of a WWE pay-per-view. I think Meltzer reported that there was one ECW pay-per-view maybe that had done 100,000 pay-per-view buys, and by the time this week is done, AEW on just purchases throughout the week are probably going to top that. So it becomes the most purchased non-WWE wrestling pay-per-view in the United States, which is a big deal.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And then another big deal for them coming off of the pay-per-view was they were the number 2 in Google Trends with over 200,000 unique searches. This was just a big deal because of the fact that AEW or many other companies in general don't crack the top 50.
This was amazing. I didn't expect this at all.
When they did All In, they didn't crack the top 10. They didn't crack the top 50. There wasn't a lot of mainstream buzz behind it. But with Double or Nothing, they were able to be the number 2 in Google Trends behind Toronto Raptors basketball playoff game that aired that night. So... And then there was just notably more interest in the AEW pay-per-view even the day after. They compared it to Money in the Bank and the last UFC pay-per-view, which both didn't have nearly as much interest as AEW had coming off of that pay-per-view.
And
so that was really
Brock
exciting.
Lesnar in one of those pay-per-views. That's kind of a big blow, or at least I feel like it is. I feel like Money in the Bank is one of WWE's larger shows now. I feel like it's kind of one of their big four, whether they like it or not. But I don't know. That seems like a big deal to me. The show that Brock comes back and does their big swerve, which I hated, and I think most people did. But like that did have a lot of buzz around it, and to think that this did so much better, leaps and bounds better, is kind of amazing, and continued to do better.
Exactly, and it's hard to include the Brock part in maybe the night of results. But as I said, the next day, the results for Double or Nothing were still more than Money in the Bank, almost by like 3 or 4 times. So people knew about Brock and they could search it up online, but they still weren't searching it as much as people were searching for Double or Nothing. And I think that's just the most exciting part for AEW is they have that interest even the day after for people to check it out.
Like numbers that you can point at to say people do want this.
And it was just fantastic business for their first show overall. So that's awesome too that they have a lot to hang their hat on off of their first show. It's not just a t-shirt company, as people were saying. They were able to put on a fantastic show. And on that note,
they sold a lot of merch from what I understand too.
Exactly. So it was just a quality show overall from top to bottom as a entertainment aspect and as a business aspect. So kudos to them.
Yeah.
And then in other AEW news, we got some confirmed matches. Going into Fyter Fest, we got Jon Moxley versus Joey Janela confirmed as probably one of the bigger main event type matches. This is an independent wrestling fan's dream match.
Oh, God, yeah.
I don't think I would have even thought it was possible a year ago.
I didn't at all.
But when Moxley was announced that he was going to return to the independent scene, I wanted to see it. I wanted to see Janela and Moxley have some type of interaction.
With how Janela had been treated in AEW, I expected to see this in CZW or GCW. I didn't expect them to put it as Jon Moxley's first opponent. I couldn't have asked for anything more. That's amazing.
Exactly, and even if Janela doesn't necessarily come out on top, it's just
it's huge.
It's huge Moxley winning. It's a huge platform for Janela in any way, shape, or form.
And
so,
like anybody who doesn't know, like while Jon Moxley's been away, Janela's really stepped into the role Jon Moxley kind of left. He's been the guy who's been great on the mic, and he's deranged, and he's young, and he's doing death matches, and it's really just perfect to have these guys wrestle and just kill each other.
Exactly, they each have their own unique aspects to them, but they definitely have their comparable. Their comparable features as independent wrestlers. So I'm super excited for this match. I can't even begin to explain how excited I am. Janela's a big favorite of mine. He has been for years. I've been paying attention to him since before the first Janela spring break and shit. So I've been big on him. I was also big on Jon Moxley before he ended up even in the WWE. So
Jon Moxley was
this is literally a dream match for me. So when they announced it, I didn't think it was coming this fast, but I'm ready.
I'm excited.
I pray that they give it a ton of like time on being the Elite and things like that to sort of build things up, because that could be great.
I expect a lot. We're going to get into how there's going to be Road 2 and all that later, but I expect a lot from those Road 2 and being the Elite segments.
Exactly. And that's the best part, is we haven't seen Janela so much, so I'm a little nervous that we won't get it. But the fact that he's paired with Moxley, someone who absolutely should be treated as a big five guy in AEW, I have to believe that Janela is going to get a lot of eyes on him over the next month, and
I
that
truly
is
believe,
awesome as a Janela fan.
I truly believe Jon Moxley wanted this. This seems like something that he would have said, I want to do a program with Janela. And I feel like this isn't getting that. I definitely think
he wanted the exciting stuff, and Janela's an exciting dude and something that he definitely probably heard a little bit of buzz about. So
he's talked about on the Jericho podcast how he wants to be in a position where he can help the most and help other people the most, and I think that's the perfect way. Like you said, you're going to get so many eyes on Janela no matter what happens with this match. And I mean, I guess a lot of people are going to say, Jon Moxley is definitely going to win, but they've been been trippy with us every single match. I got every single prediction wrong. We could easily see something where there's interference or Janela wins by cheating, just to continue Jon Moxley's feud going forward with what I'm guessing is going to be Kenny Omega.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of possibilities coming out of this match. They could do a ton of different things. They could even pair the two of them up post-match. They could have it continue on after this match. So who knows? And that's the best part about it, is I'm excited to wait and see for this storyline and this feud in AEW.
Mm-hmm.
And then they also announced that Pac has officially been removed from the Fyter Fest 6-man tag match. We've speculated on this for a while now. Something I sort of saw coming with Pac being removed from the Double or Nothing event. So now we get Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks versus the Lucha Brothers and a yet-to-be-named opponent. I hope that they announce it before Fyter Fest. I like going into some events with the surprise aspect of a new debuting wrestler, but I don't really want to do it every show, and if we do it 2 shows in a row right off the beginning, people will sort of come to expect it in almost every big pay-per-view event.
That's really fair, and I think you're right.
Which is where I think TNA fell into the role of bringing in a lot of old WWE guys just for, fresh surprise.
It's great to see Sting returning, but it's not going to be that impactful with everybody. Like, I may have been, marking out for Christian Cage, but I bet a lot of people weren't.
Exactly. So it's like, I don't mind it. I wouldn't mind if they do go into it with a big surprise thing, but I would like for them to also announce it, and I'm curious to see who it will be, just because obviously whoever this singles competitor will be is someone that they will likely pair up against Kenny Omega in the future in a singles fashion. So, and I almost wonder if it could be someone like Adam Page, who doesn't even have an announced match yet for the show.
That'd be interesting. I don't know.
It would be interesting. I don't know how they would tell the story, but
I mean, it could be a vehicle to debut somebody new. I mean, we did talk about I don't know what to call him, Johnny Impact, Johnny Elite, Johnny Wrestling. We did talk about him maybe coming into the company and how cool that would be, and that would be a really cool way to introduce him. But I also feel like you should really be putting emphasis on guys you already have.
Yeah, I think you're right there. They should definitely put emphasis on guys they already have, or guys they plan on pushing really heavily going forward. So maybe even someone like MJF, but you have to just take into consideration someone that pairs up well with the Lucha Brothers, and I think you might be onto something with Johnny Impact, and that would be interesting. And
because you have the Lucha Underground vibe there and the AAA stuff. It could be somebody who relates to them, or maybe a AAA guy.
Exactly, and I think the only thing that, the only thing Johnny Impact has needed to really elevate himself is a big match against someone like a Kenny Omega. He doesn't have to beat Kenny Omega in a singles match, but a one-on-one between those two would really elevate Impact a lot, because he's really talented, and I think that match would be a sweet match. And then another match that they announced Chris Jericho versus Adam Page is officially going to happen at All Out on August 31st in Chicago. This was another thing that we had sort of speculated on and anticipated, but it's good to have it confirmed officially, especially as I am someone who is looking forward to possibly going to All Out in the future. So it's cool to see that this first championship match will happen at that event if I happen to go.
And it's good that they're announcing this now, like you said. This is something that everybody obviously speculated this is when they're gonna have the title on, like the title match going, but it's good to get this out of the way because this isn't something you want to tease. Like, we're already giving them quite a while to build up this match, which is either going to go really good or it's either going to be way too long. But I think, considering what Jericho's been doing and how he's been utilizing the internet, I think this is going to be really interesting, and I feel like this is going to be a lot better than what we saw with Pac versus Page.
Absolutely, and I think one of the big things that I do appreciate about it is they're giving it time to build.
Yeah,
they're giving it time. Like we only saw Adam Page in a multi-man match before, so hopefully we get a couple of singles matches for him to really establish himself and set himself apart of the crowd. I think overall, just the confirmation of this match and giving fans something to look forward to, and you give Jericho this much time to build with social media, and it's going to be a positive aspect, I think. We'll likely see Jericho at the Fight for the Fallen event, which hopefully we'll see him and Page maybe not have a match together, but just some type of interaction to continue to build towards All Out, and that'll be fun.
I think so, and that's, like you said, you're going to go to Chicago. I'm definitely going to go to Fight for the Fallen. I'm excited to go to that. I should be getting my tickets real soon, and so just the fact that Jericho is going to be on that show and he said that is big for me. I don't even care if Jericho's wrestling. I'm just more excited because it makes it seem like a bigger show.
But that sort of covers up the news coming out of AEW this week. Now we're just going to talk about our thoughts on the Double or Nothing production. Things like the themes, the entrance video. Personally, for me, one of the things that stood out, as I talked about in the last episode, was Cody Rhodes' use of the throne and destroying the throne, and the use of the pyro especially. That really threw me off, but overall, I did appreciate most of the production. I thought things like Sammy Guevara's head, his panda head during his entrance was really awesome.
That was fun.
What were your thoughts on the production, AJ?
Overall, good. Overall, for a first show, phenomenal. Like a first big show. I know they had All In, but obviously Tony Khan wasn't working with them at all, and this is their first real AEW show. And as far as that's concerned, I think they did a really, really good job. There's definitely things they have to work on, and I think they absolutely are going to be on top of that. They're probably studying what went wrong with the show and every misstep meticulously, because there were things like in the pre-show, they all came out and they were doing a big group promo to introduce the show, and that got cut off, and that looked really weird. During the Battle Royal, it's not easy to shoot a Battle Royal. I think WWE has had a lot of practice, and on top of that, it's a Battle Royal which is non-traditional, where you have the 5 people coming out at a time, which made it really hard to give backstories on guys. I think it was just kind of a messy situation for the commentators, for the people working the camera, for people who have no idea how to, wrestlers who don't know to like look at what camera or where they should be facing. But those are just my discrepancies. Overall, the show really nailed it. Most of the matches, even the fast-paced ones like SCU and Strong Hearts, the camera was always on the game. You were catching all the important action. They were focusing on the ring, which is what you really want to see. And overall, it didn't look like an indie show. It didn't look like Ring of Honor. And Ring of Honor has good production, but it looked more like something like WWE or New Japan, where it looked like a real show, like a real event.
Yeah, and I think that was the best part for me as a fan. This looked super professional. Everything from the music, from the videos to the music, everything was super professional. I think some themes did leave some things to be desired, but outside of that, there were some missed camera shots, some issues there, but a lot of the issues were really rectified by the time that the main show started. I agree. So a lot of it just happened on the pre-show, which was available for free. There were issues with people trying to watch it live on YouTube. I think it didn't start properly on YouTube, so there was issues with that. Then there was obviously issues with it being cut off at the end. So that did leave you a little nervous going into the pay-per-view, but if you purchased the pay-per-view and you watched the pay-per-view, you were left blown away with essentially everything. Like I said, there were obviously missed spots. That's going to happen in all of wrestling.
Yep.
It's common with every company, but it's common with a live product in general, and they will just get better with that. But outside of that, there was nothing I really had a lot of a gripe about. I thought the announcing got better throughout the whole show.
It got a lot better.
But overall, Jim Ross did a fantastic job on the card. I thought that Excalibur did a fantastic job as well. I thought that Alex Marvez left something to be desired at points, but
I know it was controversial. I know me saying I like him is maybe not the most popular statement, but honestly, in the pre-show, did not like it. I didn't think I was going to like him, and I really didn't think I was going to like the three-man team. As it went on, I still think I'd prefer a two-man team, but I really don't have any problems with them. Not any big ones.
Right, and throughout the main show, I almost thought that he was taking a backseat position, but post-show I read an interview that essentially said that his job is to play like a Jay Glazer, an Adam Schefter, insider football type of perspective, where he just comes in with a little bit of inside news or inside scoop or something.
And I'm sure it's going to take more form on the show. It'll be cool.
And closing out our thoughts on Double or Nothing, we're going to talk about Dave Meltzer's star ratings for the main card of the event. The first match on the event was SCU, Christopher Daniels, Frankie Kazarian, and Scorpio Sky versus SEMA, T-Hawk, and Lindemann.
Great match.
Dave Meltzer rated this match 4 stars out of 5, so pretty good rating from the man himself.
And I think you and me were talking before, saying it did seem high, but I don't have a problem with it being high. That was a great match, and while I'm not going to say it was my favorite match on the card, or I necessarily thought it was 4 stars at the time, it felt like I was watching a Dragon Gate match, which I think was the goal of the match, to really present a style of tag team matches that is kind of lost as of recent, and you get to see a really high, quick, fast, and big impact tag team match like that, and just perform perfection.
This was a great match, and I didn't necessarily think it was 4 stars, as you said, but I think it was a great opener anyway, and so it's hard to disagree with a 4-star rating.
I'll take the high ratings from Meltz. Give them up. Make them all 5. Sell out.
No. But in the next match, we got Britt Baker versus Nyla Rose versus Kylie Ray versus the unannounced Awesome Kong. We all sort of thought that this was going to be Brandy Rhodes in that position, but instead she announced that she wanted the match to be awesome and brought out Awesome Kong. Dave Meltzer only gave this match a 3-star rating.
Yeah, that would surprise me because I feel like this is a moment in wrestling that I'm going to go back and watch. I'm kind of one of those people who will just go on YouTube to watch big wrestling returns because I think it's cool to just hear that pop. And later we're going to talk about Kong and how she talked about that moment. But it was amazing. That's one of those things that I really just turned into a little kid fan. And I really did like this match overall too. And I really liked, because I would have been okay with basically anybody coming out on top of this match, but I think it was a good decision, even though I would have preferred, from personal bias, for Awesome Kong to come in and win. I think it's a really good decision to make Britt Baker the woman to beat in AEW. I think that's a really solid move on their part.
Exactly, and I do think that Britt Baker was a solid choice to win, but I got to agree with Meltz here. 3 stars is pretty much a perfect rating for this match, in my opinion. I don't think it was anything huge. And then in the next match, we get the best friends, Chuck Taylor and Trent Beretta versus Angelico and Jack Evans. Dave Meltzer gave this match a 3.75 star rating.
I think you said it before. When Jack Evans is on, he's on. When you're watching a good Jack Evans match, you know it. And it's always like that. And when it's bad, it's almost always just like, oh, this isn't going well. This is some WSX shit. But when it's great, it's great. And this was one of those times.
Absolutely. I thought the match itself was fantastic. I do think that the post-match left a lot to be desired, especially if you're a fan who doesn't know exactly much about the Super Smash Brothers or anything like that. But other than that, What?
You told me about that. I didn't even consider until you told me that they weren't allowed to say Super Smash Bros. On TV. I was like, oh my god, you're right. Like, I really can't. Like, that, they're in such a corner.
Yeah, and so that just made it really confusing for fans. They couldn't say the name of the tag team attacking everybody. So Jim Ross was confused, and that made me as a viewer even more confused because I was like, well, I know Jim Ross doesn't know who they are, but obviously Excalibur does.
And the evil Unos are so cool, and the lights out are so cool, and it was all fun, but it's like nobody knew. And I'm a Chikara boy. I love this. I love this so much. And so it's really a shame, but I think it's still cool, by the way. Like, even
Me
though
too,
that
and
happened.
I think they could potentially build it up a little bit more, and it could become something that gets better over time. So, and it was still a cool moment, don't get me wrong, but there was something to be desired, for sure. But I think that the overall match rating of 3.75 stars is pretty much spot on for this match as well. It was a good tag team match. And then we also had another tag team match up next. It was the Joshi 6 women tag team match. This match was also a 3.75 star match. I do just want to start this off by saying when I watched this match back, I realized that me and AJ were way wrong. Mm-hmm. I thought that Yuka Sakazaki was someone that stood out entirely, like, in this match as someone that I'm going to keep an eye on. She just seemed really like a fun personality and a really happy-go-lucky wrestler. And just the match itself was really great. I do think that the finish was lacking because of the misplaced ringing of the bell and things of that nature, but other than that, it was a really great six-woman showcase of Joshi wrestling.
I've been on the Joshi wagon for a long time. I've been preaching this for a long time, and so it's a big opinion to make, but I honestly think if they're able to hire these women, not just on a open contract basis, but if they're bringing in an actual division of these women who can really go and really have a great match, that you're going to have the best women's division in the world, at least in a big company. Because New Japan, they don't have a Joshi division, and they're probably not going to for a long time. And Ring of Honor really never has a women's division. And Impact does, but I don't know if it's how it is right now. I know Tessa Blanchard's there, and that's cool. And WWE is just starting to really get there. But I think AEW could bring it to a whole other level if they really just embrace this.
Then the next match of the night was my personal match of the night, a lot of people's personal match of the night, Cody versus Dustin Rhodes. Dave Meltzer gave this match 5 stars.
This match was amazing. It had such emotion to it. This is the kind of match where you don't need to know the story. You don't need to know what's going on. All you need to do is sit down and watch it. You could show somebody who's never seen wrestling this match, and they would understand how much is going on and how deep this is. It felt like a deep cut, and like, I mean, I don't mean that as a pun, because damn did he get gigged, but
he had a deep cut.
But that was cutting. And the aftermatch promo, the I need my older brother, it was an emotional match. This is the kind of thing you watch wrestling for.
Absolutely, and it just had every piece that I would say you need for a 5-star match. In order to call a match a 5-star match, you need a great crowd, you need a great story, you need a great match. You need all of those pieces. You can't just have a fantastic match, in my opinion,
and what I
call
mean
it
to
a
say,
5-star match.
When I say, like, you can just put somebody in front, like, I've seen, and so have you, like, a pure wrestling match where we're just, like, seeing, like, Tanahashi and Okada, and, like, we don't, for a long time, there's English commentary with Japan now, but for a long time, that was not a thing, and you just had to watch the match and understand what was going on by the story they're telling in the ring, and this is something that was perfectly done.
The next match was the semi-main event, the Tag Team Championship match, the Young Bucks defending against Pentagon Jr. and Phoenix. Dave Meltzer gave this match 4.75 stars. I don't know if I would give it that much. It was an okay match. But what do you think?
I liked it. It wasn't my favorite. It was very, very difficult for any match to follow Cody and Dustin. And I know that originally this was supposed to be the main event. So I understand why they felt like it should be at least the second match, but honestly, maybe it should have been the opener. Like, if it's not going to be last, put it on first kind of deal. But this definitely was not the spot for it because I was drained. I needed a cool down, and I know they did a little cool down segment, but I needed way more because going into this high-paced kick-out match, which I'm not saying I hate matches like that, but it was a lot.
Yeah, and I do understand, like, like I said, they were trying to tell a story within this match. It was that the Young Bucks haven't wrestled in 6 months, and so they're rusty and they're missing moves a little bit here and there, and then they start to bring it back together and they start hitting their old moves that they weren't hitting before, and everything starts falling into place, so they're able to win the championships back or retain the championship. So I get all of that. But I don't think that this was a 4.75 star match to me. I don't agree that if you hit a bunch of finishers and you kick out of a bunch of finishers, that it's automatically some huge match. Like, it's a PWG style match.
Yeah.
It is what it is, but I don't think it was that necessarily something to write home about.
And that's a nice story, but I don't know if I really understood that story while I was watching it, because again, one, just coming off Dustin and Cody, that's a lot, and two, it just felt like, wow, I'm seeing a whole lot of things happen. So it's kind of hard to follow, oh, they're missing this on purpose. That's always a little difficult and always hard line to walk of, oh, I'm being bad on purpose.
And in the main event, we obviously get Kenny Omega versus Chris Jericho. Dave Meltzer rated this match 4.25 stars. I didn't think it was a bad match. I thought they told a pretty good story. I
love it.
Omega being busted open with the broken nose really cool. Added to the match. So
I really like this match. I really like Jericho's new style. I like how he's been wrestling. And I know it wasn't the cleanest match. And I know there were problems, but god damn. How old is Jericho? 48? I think he's 48 years old.
Yeah, he's old, man.
People who are 48 in wrestling normally could never do what Chris Jericho is doing right now. Triple H would not be able to do. The only person who I can really think who really got up there in age and was still able to go was somebody like Shawn Michaels and maybe Ric Flair when he was in his 40s. But there's not many people who are able to wrestle that well for that long, and Chris Jericho is clearly one of those people.
Yeah, man, and there were a couple of missed spots in this match, so I can understand maybe bringing it down a little bit for that. But honestly, I thought this match was a little bit better than 4.25 stars, just because the abruptness of how it finished, the way that they protected the One-Winged Angel, the way that Jericho was able to get his win back over Omega, and it was all clean, and he didn't cheat for it or anything like that, and it was just a really solid match.
It's an unpopular... I like abrupt endings in wrestling. I like it when somebody knocked out and that's the end of the match and you could be like, what? It doesn't feel right. But that's because that's how fights end sometimes. Like, you don't expect the guy to just crumble and lose, but that's how it happens sometimes, and that's amazing. Like, there's a match, it's a Joshi match, Shinobu Kandori and Akira Hokuto, and that match, spoilers, ends in a very weird way with just one closed fist punch and knocking the fucker out. And I'm not going to say who, but anyways, because go watch it. But I love stuff like that, and I love the Judas effect. We were talking about the Judas effect is either going to be really cool or it's going to suck. It's really cool. I really like this.
And that just wraps up basically all of Double or Nothing. We got the star ratings in. We got our thoughts on the production and everything. So that was just a great event, and I'm glad that we had such an awesome event to lead things off for AEW.
Couldn't be better.
But that's obviously not the end. Now we're going right back into Being the Elite. We're going to try things a little bit differently now. We're going to just sort of run down all of Being the Elite and then sort of discuss our feelings on it afterwards. And so with that being said, I'm going to run down Being the Elite episode 154, backstage at Double or Nothing. This episode starts with Jon Moxley, and he's backstage at Double or Nothing. And before making his debut, we just get a couple of behind the scenes of him getting ready to come out, and he comes out, and then we cut to the usual opener of Being the Elite. Then we get MJF. He's at the Double or Nothing press conference, but he's not supposed to be there, so he ends up being removed. From there, we get Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks and Cody Rhodes. They're all taking a look at the set before we get a preview of Cody knocking down his throne. So it was cool to see that.
Looked a lot
better. We also see Cody and the Young Bucks, and they're backstage, and they're wearing the new AEW Championship. Nick Jackson is wearing it, showing it off. We then go to the morning of Double or Nothing. Matt Jackson's in the ring with his son, and this is just a cool little feel-good moment of family and things of that nature. Then in another cool moment, we get Masa backstage, and he gets to meet Mike Tyson, who also happens to be backstage at AEW, which was surprising.
I kind of love Fat Ass Masa, and I didn't think I would.
Yeah. And Also backstage is none other than Flip Gordon. He's wearing a lucha mask, and he surprises Adam Page. And that was cool to see, just Flip Gordon backstage. He didn't actually make an appearance at Double or Nothing, but he was around to support his buddies. We go to the SCU locker room where we get Scorpio Sky. He goes to give Kaz his trunks, but Kaz doesn't really want him. He says that they have new gear anyway. Scorp laughs this off and walks away before Kaz throws the trunks onto Daniel's face, who says, ew. And this was apparently a throwback to Rocky IV. We then get a behind-the-scenes view of the Young Bucks skit that they did to open up Double or Nothing when they super kicked the guy who told them they didn't have the proper credentials. This transitions to Adam Page's entrance at the Casino Battle Royale. We get a couple of fan clips of Page's entrance before we go backstage once again, where we see Alex Jabali meeting Michael Nakazawa. Michael Nakazawa sprays some baby oil on the ground. Alex Jabali fails, and this is just a quick little Michael Nakazawa comedy segment. We then get production segments of them waiting for Moxley's debut. As AJ said, we see Cody Rhodes all bloody sitting in the production booth waiting for the debut. Cool. And we see it, and we switch to the fan cam of Mox attacking Jericho and Omega. We then close Being the Elite with a John Moxley and Joey Janela stare down, where Moxley comes in, takes a cigarette that Janela just sparked, takes a hit off of it, blows the smoke into Janela's face, and throws the cigarette and walks away. Cool. It was an awesome stare down. What did you think of Being the Elite, man?
I love this episode top to bottom. I really liked that it was basically just a behind-the-scenes episode. I liked getting to see the Young Bucks and in a more production fashion where he's lugging a bunch of shit to the Grand, and he's with his kid, and that was cute. And it was great to see Earl Hebner count the pin. Obviously, I liked everything with Moxley. Everything, and especially, I really liked how they did it. How they started the episode with the cold open, and how they ended that with all those cool fan angles and all those really great camera shots. I really like the Rocky IV references. I'm sure a lot of people are sick of SCU doing Rocky references, but I think it's silly and I like it. I think most of all, though, Mox and Janela at the end was just mind-blowing. I was freaking out. I've never freaked out or marked out at a Being the Elite episode. Not like that. That was something I didn't expect at all.
Yeah, absolutely, especially after seeing Mox in the open. You didn't necessarily expect to see him again at the end. We also haven't seen a lot of Janela on Being the Elite over the last couple of months, so just to see two people that I'm a huge fan of closing out this show definitely left a big impression on me for this episode of Being the Elite. It was one of my favorite episodes. There was a little bit that I didn't like in the Michael Nakazawa, Alex Bailey thing. It's
whatever. I was mad about it before, but I'm kind of just gonna make my peace with it. It's gonna be over soon. How bad could it? Okay, it could get bad. We'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's just the thing that I think I struggle with is they talk about how they're only gonna do so much comedy.
Right.
But this is the comedy that we're doing. I almost would rather Joey Ryan because sells.
You don't know what you're saying right now.
That's a proven draw to some people.
I guess you're right.
And then we also got a surprise episode of Road to Double or Nothing, the epilogue. We sort of thought that this series might be ending. We had a lot of questions on whether or not we would return in a new form. And we got an answer that we would at least get the epilogue for this episode. We get Shawn Spears, Dustin Rhodes, Awesome Kong, and Billy Gunn. They all each talk individually about their debuts or their work on this show, which was nice to see. It was cool to see their take on things. Then we get Kenny Omega, and he's talking about his involvement in bringing the Joshi women onto this show and how we can plan to see them continue on in the future. Yeah. We then see Mike Tyson once again backstage as they continue to promote Mike Tyson's involvement within AEW in some way or another. We also get a big highlight of Dave Meltzer and DDP and Dustin talking on the Dustin versus Cody Rhodes match and how it was really historic and how it was a big deal. And I thought that was cool how they presented it like that. Then they had highlights of the two main event matches on the card. We get some really cool highlights of the Young Bucks versus the Lucha Brothers and Chris Jericho versus Kenny Omega with some really cool background hype music. We also then get highlights of John Moxley making his entrance at Double or Nothing in the same fashion. Yeah. We then get a John Moxley promo going over some more highlights of his debut before we then get the Janela versus Moxley backstage segment to promote their Fyter Fest match. And then we get an announcement of Road to Fyter. So Road to series is back. And another great episode of it, I must add.
I'm I loved it. I loved Sean Spears. I always do. I know a lot of people don't. I know you're not big on him, but it's cool to see him. I also really, really liked what Awesome Kong was saying, that when her return happened, when that music hit and she came out, she had to become the Kong persona and become just total badass, because if she hadn't done that 100%, she would have been too emotional, because she could literally feel the ground shaking from everybody losing their shit. And I mean, I know I was when Kong came back. That was amazing, and I'm so glad that she said she's all in. Like, she's signed, she's with this company, and I really didn't think she would ever be back. I thought she was moving on, and she was so good in Glow. She was such a good actor. I was like, oh, she doesn't need to be wrestling anymore, does she? But because she always seemed like one of the coolest wrestlers, one of the coolest chicks, and I'm really glad that she's going to be a part of wrestling again. I was really excited to see Kenny Omega put such an emphasis on the Joshi division, and that it is going to be something that's going to stay in AEW. And that makes sense. You don't sign Aja Kong and then don't do anything with your Joshi wrestlers. That's kind of weird. So I'm really excited, and like I said, I really think it could become one of the best divisions. Like you were saying, also Meltzer and DDP and everybody talking about the Dustin Cody match, it just makes it feel like it's more important, and it's cool. I love this. I love this epilogue. I love the being the lead. Everything we got this week was really amazing.
Absolutely, and I was really glad with the epilogue, because the Road to Double or Nothing season finale leading into Double or Nothing left us a lot to be desired. I felt like as fans of AEW, we wanted a lot more, because it was the series finale, or we thought that we weren't going to see any more of these shows. But then we get this epilogue, which from top to bottom, I loved everything from their interviews at the beginning, Kenny on the Joshi, the highlights of the two main event matches, just the way we promoted these matches in such an awesome, quick way to fans who might be new to it and not have seen it. And then you get to hear Moxley's promo over his awesome actions.
So cool.
And then we get to finish it off with the interaction of two of my favorite wrestlers. So this was absolutely my favorite Road 2 show as well. And it was just a great way to finish it off and leave me wanting them to sort of continue this type of feel for the Road 2 series after the show.
I really like the first Road 2, but I think you're right. I think this would be my favorite out of all of them.
Yeah, and I hope that they almost do a Road 2 epilogue of the next one, where they do the exact same type of formula, a couple interviews with people who are on the show, and then we talk about a couple people who might happen to be backstage that are famous.
Have Dave
and then
throw
we get
some
highlights
stars
of the big matches, and we get Dave Meltzer happen to talk historically about like
That's
one big
cool.
match on every show. That would be awesome to me.
It doesn't even have to be Dave. Like, how you can have other wrestling. You can have Brian Alvarez, you could have Wade Keller, you could have a lot of people just giving their opinion and make it seem more like a sport or more like an event.
But yeah, that was just a great episode of Road 2. Like you said, a great episode of everything from them this week, the Being the Elite stuff, the Road 2 stuff. It was really awesome, and if you haven't watched it, I suggest you check it all out. That really covers everything for us with the All Elite podcast, though, this week. We covered everything on those two new shows. We covered a majority of the news coming out of Double or Nothing. We covered the star ratings from Dave Meltzer. AJ, is there anything you want to add?
No, not really. I'm really excited to be a wrestling fan. I'm really excited about All Elite Wrestling. I'm excited for October when we're going to actually get to see this on TNT. Really, that was such a good show, and it's really stuck with me. And I know you watched it again. I haven't gotten to watch that again, but I really do think I'm going to do that in the next couple days. I've been working on more short films and more things that like editing and writing. So if you want to follow any of that, you can follow my Instagram at AJTheFitzy, Fitzy, or you can follow me on Twitter at BigMatchAJ.
Yeah, man, and I'm right there with you as far as being excited to be a wrestling fan and just have a new alternative wrestling company to watch and get excited for. And just excited to hopefully go to these events and get to see the wrestling and get to sort of meet the other people that are interested in this company as well. And I do just have to once again give a shout out to everyone who's listened to us on Spotify
Thank you guys so
iTunes or YouTube or anything like that, because we appreciate the following that we've been able to garner through All Elite Wrestling and get to talk to different people and discuss different things on Twitter and things like that. We definitely appreciate all of those things that we've been able to do just through the use of this platform. platforms. So
I was never
last
a Twitter
week, like
guy,
I said,
but-
we got a lot bigger of a following. So I just wanted to once again give a shout out and a thank you to everyone for checking us out. And if you would like to engage with us on Twitter or talk to us about anything, give us any feedback, you can hit us up on Twitter at All Elite Podcast. You can also hit me up on Twitter. I'm All Elite Andy on Twitter. I changed my Twitter handle this week after I realized how bad it was a couple weeks ago. But thank you guys for listening, and until next week, see ya.
Bye.
My heart is still beating and I'm breathing. Fresh air for the first time in a long time. My name, John Moxley, and I am on a mission to reclaim my soul. And I know I'm not the only one who thinks, you know, it's about time this industry got a facelift. So make no mistake about it, this is an official declaration of war tonight.